Thank you for joining, everyone. Well, we have the great honor and pleasure of having Tammy Lally with us. And let me tell you something. There are a couple things that I really enjoy talking about, which makes me strange to most people because the topics that people like to shy away from, I like to dive in even deeper. And we're talking about money today, right? And I can't think of someone better to talk about this subject with. 20 years in the financial industry, 30 years studying psychology, understanding the spiritual aspect behind money, which is really, Tammy, what a lot of people are missing, right? We kind of go head first into let me get that money. And then we get it and we can't keep it. And then we're struggling to maintain this image. But you know what I've also learned, Tammy? Some of the most wealthy people that I've spoken to are the most spiritually grounded people. And it's like they make more money and more money and more money. It almost looks effortless, and you're just watching this. And so I really want to introduce you today. You are a money coach, you're a TEDx speaker, which is so incredible because it's a forum where people can share their personal stories and we can learn from them. You have a very amazing story that is deep, it is painful. And for a lot of us today, a lot of us are experiencing kind of like a pain. We're not wearing it on our face, but we're in this financial world that's very confusing. It's kind of been flipped on its head, and we're all figuring ourselves out. So I couldn't think of a better time to talk to a money coach, get our heads right so that we could flourish into the future. And so I wanted to introduce you today by starting off with this question of, Tammy, you have this book, you're an author of Money Detox. Why do we need to detox ourselves? Like, what could be polluting our minds, literally clogging up our progress? So we're doing all the right things, but it feels like we're not gaining traction. What would you say in all of your years of experience is causing us to really need a money detox right now?
It's a great question, and it's really simple. The simplicity is that we give all of our power away to money. And when you give your power away to money, if you don't have money, you become immediately powerless. If you're earning less, if you lose a job, if you get cut back on, if you're in commission and you're not earning what you need to earn that month, or you're just chasing money, um, it's going to have a deeply emotional and spiritual impact. So the reason we need a detox is because we need to detach or untangle and unpack all of this power that we've given to money. And it's very difficult because we live in a society that glorifies money, glorifies wealth, glorifies success. So it's a really tricky one.
Right. And, especially in today's world, and when I spoke to you beforehand, I said, like, I do like nice things. I like living a nice life, but I was always the kind of person that, it was in a ratio for me, right? I see a lot of people that are prematurely living the good life, and then it ends up, with that person being in a rough spot. So in today's world where it's so image driven, it's so, funneled to get more stuff. Why is it so important that instead what I teach my team is like, worry about the skills that you're developing, worry about who you're becoming as a person, and the money will come to you. It absolutely will come to you, especially if you're in a financial industry. So just sharing that knowledge that you have, because you have many years of working in the financial industry and doing financial planning for families. What do you find are the biggest, almost pitfalls that they're going through? And then how do you pull them out of it? Like, what detox do you give to them to pull them out of it?
Yeah. You know, if you think about this from just traditional financial place, when people come in and they work with a financial planner or an insurance agent or a CPA or a bookkeeper, basically they're wanting an easy solution to, okay, how do I organize my money? What do I need to do for the future? But what's not being addressed in any of those conversations is, what are the emotional pieces that you keep bringing to the money conversation? What's the story that you keep bringing into your finances? So if you only sit down with somebody and talk about the math and map out a financial plan, you're really missing the bigger conversation, the most important conversation, which is, what is your money story? How did you grow up around money? What do you understand? Like, how do you feel when you talk about money? What's the first thing that you think about, or when you think back to your childhood, of what was your first childhood experience? How did your parents handle money? What did you hear your parents say? What did your parents do? That's the real conversation. And that is going to have a lasting impact, because anybody can give anybody a blueprint, but the reality is only 20% of people in the United States that receive a blueprint can implement that. A financial plan can implement it. That means there's 80% of us that have too much anxiety or overwhelm or confusion or lack of understanding or lack of knowledge or lack of skill. Mostly an emotional imbalance that they can't handle the conversation around money. 80%.
Wow. I love that you have the background of studying psychology and then marrying it with the financial industry, because I
Mhm.
think you're right on. I think that you have to help people by digging deeper than just saying, make more money, spend less, right? That's kind of everyone knows that. But why don't we do it? Why don't we do it, right? We get caught up in another game because of the place that we're coming from. And I think you said the magic word, which is story, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is the story? If you could elaborate on that. And then the next question is, where do we get our story from? Because
Yeah.
it just doesn't come to us. It was given to us. And until we own our story, only then can we change it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would keep it really simple and just, for people to think about, what is your first childhood money memory? Like, what was the first thing that you remember? So for
Probably
some,
our parents fighting over money.
okay. So,
Yes.
so let's say, you're experiencing that over and over and over. So how would you imagine that you might feel when the topic of money comes up when you become a teenager or you move into your early adulthood? How do you think you might react to that if your parents are constantly fighting about money as a
I,
kid?
I think as a child watching that, we get very anxious, we get very
Mhm.
tight. And so then as an adult, we almost would go into this place of avoidance, right? Like, I rather just not talk about it. It becomes this thing like, I don't want to feel that. So how do we cure our
Right on.
okay.
Right on. That is exactly right. So what happens is you start moving into an avoidance pattern. So avoidance around money is okay when you're a teenager, or I'm sorry, when you're 10. You
Yes.
know, when you're a teenager, it's still a little bit okay because there's not any major things that are going to happen, major decisions. Sometimes, not true for everybody. But when you're 18, 19, 20, you cannot keep avoiding money, because now what's happened is you've either gone right into the workforce or you've gone into college. If you're in college and you're not dealing with money, and then you get a credit card, or you get presented with a credit card or student loans, and you're not dealing with that, you're avoiding that, that's going to become a big problem when you get out of school. Okay? Same thing for people that don't go to school but go right into the workforce, which is the real school, right? um,
Yes.
is you're going to start making decisions. The decisions you're going to make is, sometimes you need to buy a car, you need to take out a credit card, you need to get a place to rent, a place to live, buy a house. You're going to be making major life decisions, major financial decisions based on a story that happened to you as a kid that is now in your subconscious mind. It's not conscious, it's not fully known to you, and it's going to drive all your patterns and behaviors. Why would you do that? That's not, I mean, would you go into buying a home without understanding anything about your financial emotional state? Well, the answer is yes, that we do it
I
and we
think a
do it all the
lot of us
time.
do.
Yeah, everybody does it all the time. But my message is we need to start examining the story. What happened when you were a kid? What did you witness? What did you see? Money stories are loaded with trauma. There's a lot of trauma that we grew up in. I mean, kids go through watching their parents go bankrupt, foreclosures, losing jobs, people dying. All of that has a great, great, great impact on the way that you're going to be able to handle life and on life's terms emotionally. Just those pieces. And if you've ever had to, if you've been in a world where money was scarce and you're always in survival mode, the family was in survival mode around money, that really impacts your brain. That's a real trauma. And so when you move into your adult life, if you do not examine the money story, you're just going to repeat this. You're going to repeat the trauma. We repeat what we don't repair. So the reason for examining the money story or working with somebody to examine the money story is to really see what's in the way that's going to prevent you from accumulating wealth, or prevent you from the dream, or prevent you from living this life that you really want to live. It's all packed in there, and it's got to get pulled up. The story's got to get pulled up. You got to expose the roots, and you got to start working with it.
I love this because the same way we detox, our bodies so that we can absorb nutrients, it's the exact same way when you're dealing with money. It's like money can be given to someone, but if they're financially and spiritually broken, they won't be able to keep it. And then they're going to end up in another state of poverty and they're going to wonder why. And I know a lot of your coaching is to get people away from that victim mentality, right? And to get them into that ownership mentality. So if you could talk about that and just kind of tie into your personal story, which is very touching. And it is like, it's another, trauma that you had to endure, but in seeing that in your brother's family, how you guys came together as a family, aided them in that time, but then they ended up being in that same situation because, and this is what made you realize there's emotional baggage there. So how do we, number one, not have that victim mentality and start to take ownership of our actions so we can get to a better place? And then, the importance of it so we don't keep repeating the same errors. So if it's not about getting money, it's about being able to receive it and to keep it and to grow it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought up the victim. So I believe that, there's at least 4 or 5 big money saboteurs, and the victim is the number one. Okay. Victim means this. Victim is that pour me, pour me, pour me another latte, or pour me a glass of wine, you know, right? It's like that pour me, like, blame game, everybody's, everything that's happened to me is because of somebody else. It's a very, very strong energy. It will keep you broke. It will keep you broke. It'll keep you from missed opportunities. It will prevent you from stepping into your power. It'll prevent you from having relationships that you want. Um, it's a doozy. So the deal with the victim is the victim wants to be rescued, right? And the victim has been likely victimized at some point in their early life. So the victimization that happens is real. And that could happen in a multiple of different ways. In your story, in your money story, there's abuse, there's neglect, there's physical, there's sexual abuse. I mean, there's just a lot of things that happen to us when we're kids, and those are real. Unexamined, what happens is they go underground and then they start playing out in every aspect of your life. They'll play out with your food, they'll play out with your money, they'll play out with your relationships. I mean, those are the big three, right? Those are the big three that we are all focused on. So, the way that you work with a victim is first, you got to take responsibility for your part.
Right.
You have to take responsibility. If you're in a financial crisis or you're just in a financial debt trap and you can't seem to get out of it, or if you're earning great money, but you have nothing left at the end of the month, and you have a whole story about why that is, you have to take responsibility. You have to ask yourself, okay, what part am I playing in this? And this is hard to do on your own. So you have to generally have to ask for help. I don't know many people that can do self-examination just out of the gate, super easy unless you've had a lot of practice doing self-examination. So a lot of times you need help from people. Sometimes it's a coach, sometimes it's a therapist, but you need it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to shift a victim energy into a more sage energy, that more powerful spiritual energy. Very difficult to do that on your own. So, first and foremost, you got to take responsibility in the fact that, hey, I got a problem here. Listen to your friends, listen to your partner that keeps saying, all you do is blame everybody. All you do is blame everybody. Everybody knows that person in your family. Everybody knows that friend that, sits around and wow, 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 woe is me, woe is me. Um, so it's like, listen to the people around you that love you.
I love
Um,
this. And then, just to understand, if someone is playing that victim role, does giving them money help them?
okay. So, yeah, short answer, no, it does not.
And
More
why not?
thoughtful, yeah, more thoughtful answer is this. And this is where I'll segue into my personal story. So in my family, I grew up in a blue collar family, hard workers, police officers, plumbers, contractors, just really hardworking people. And in our family, we're all from, immigrants from Western European. And my grandparents, you work hard and you take care of your family. Like that was a core money belief. And in my mother's house, there was 8 siblings, and my grandmother was a widow, fairly young, and everybody that worked had to put their they had to give their paycheck to my grandmother. And then my grandmother basically paid the bills and then gave them out, spending money, so to speak, as they got older and wanted to go on dates. So in my family bloodline, it's about you help your family first, right? Help your family first. So how this plays out for me is I have 2 older brothers. I was the youngest of 3. We start working, we start getting into the workforce, and one of my brothers um, just didn't seem to, he had a family really young. He had a baby at the age of 20, him and his wife, and he kind of got set back, and he didn't really step in to his work potential. Was given a lot of opportunity, but he just couldn't step in. He just didn't. He had low self-esteem and things like that. And really early on, we all just kept helping each other. And when we needed money, if one of us needed something, $100 here, $100 there. But as things progressed with my brother, he got into his 30s and he kept calling and needing money for like real basic stuff, like help with this and help with that. And he kind of him and his wife went to all the parents, and the parents could only do what the parents could do. So eventually they started pulling equity out of their home. This was back in, the housing market, 2006, 2007, which is what so many people did. They started taking the cash out and then getting into these short-term, 2-year arms, 5-year arms. And what's scary about that for people is that if you don't keep your credit score elevated and make your payments on time, your credit score will drop, and then all of a sudden you can't refinance and you can't take care of yourself. And that's basically what happened with my brother and his wife. Is they started playing this game of they kept overextending, and every time their house went up in value, they refinanced, took more cash out to pay for private school, to pay for car repairs, to pay for things that they couldn't afford. And they became mired in debt. I mean, they became so mired in debt, and my brother was not willing to get help. He came to me. I basically did the tough love financial planner, hey, spend less, earn more. And that's not what he needed to hear. He was really struggling emotionally, and I didn't understand that. He was struggling with a lot of shame. He was struggling with, not being able to keep up with his lifestyle, taking care of his family. He had a lot of pain around that. And when you live in that kind of pain, you have to numb out. You have to drink, you have to take a pill, you got to smoke weed, you got to, shop, you got to watch Netflix. I mean, people cannot live in that level of pain. And so he started abusing alcohol. He started, and it just went down, down, down to eventually facing foreclosure. That's where he got to. He faced another foreclosure. There was nobody that could bail them out to this degree, and he could not see a way out other than by suicide. And he took his life. And that was it was an extraordinary, painful, traumatic life experience for my family, myself, and our friends. And it was just, and because on so many levels, the first thing you think of is, oh God, I could have done more. I could, I should have given him more money, or should have helped. And the reality was, it wasn't about money. My brother was in a deeply, deeply, he was having a deep spiritual crisis. He didn't have worth. He didn't feel like his value was bigger than what his paycheck was. Like, he had so much shame around money, and everything that was connected to his well-being was how much money he had. Could he afford this? Could he afford that? And he lived in tremendous comparison with his friends, and all my friends are doing great. I'm not doing great. I da da da. It was just an awful, awful life experience to go through, and it led me to examine myself, because my brother and I came from the same family. I had no idea that he was capable of killing himself. I just had no idea. So it scared me. It really scared me. And I thought, my God, there must be more mental health issues than are talked about in our family. There's more depression. There's more bipolar. There were so many things going on that nobody was talking about. And I started digging in. I started getting into my own money story. I started looking at my own shame and what I was doing with money. And that has been the catalyst for my work. That is why I do the work I do today, and the way that I do it, where I go heavy on emotional, psychological money story, and then weave into the financial planning and the financial blueprints. Because without that foundation of really understanding, who you are, what happened to you, that is the key. What happened to you as a kid, not what's wrong with you that you can't keep up, keep your budget going, or you have so much debt. The question isn't what's wrong with you. The question is what happened, and find a way to uncover what happened.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. I know it can never get easy saying
Mhm.
such a painful story. And I think for a lot of people, we have our internal pains, but it's almost like, when you bring it out, and I always say this to my team, like, things will always get way more messy before it starts to clean itself up. And like, you've got to go through that mess. You got to go through it, almost to get to the other side. And I think that that story will help people to understand, that people are going through their individual pains. But when you say these words like value and worth, and people, valuing themselves based on comparing themselves to other people, I think that's a powerful lesson for people. One of my favorite sayings is that comparison is the thief of joy, right? And so how do we get our value and our emotional self, our foundation good after we get through our story and we see like this is brewing in there, right? And I want to nip that in the bud. I can't ignore it. I have to acknowledge it. Then how do I pivot and change so I can continuously make better decisions and really set myself and my family financially free?
Yeah. You have to start establishing new habits.
Yes.
Yeah. So you need to practice. You need to practice new habits. So the only way that you're going to change fundamentally how your brain is hardwired, because your brain is hardwired when it comes to the way you deal with money, and your beliefs are subconscious. So if you're going to have to, so you're up against a lot. So you've got to push through and you've got to try something new every day, something scary every day. And that could be as simple as tracking your spending. That's simple. I know that that's not easy, but it's that simple. So that could be a simple tool of writing down on a daily basis what are you spending. And all you have to do is pull up your credit card, pull up your bank statement. But sitting down and doing that practice. If you think about old school, right? I grew up watching my grandmother put all the spending in a book.
Right.
You know, I grew up watching my mother do the same thing and my stepfather doing the same thing. They still do their money that way. Well, guess what? So do I. So I keep a track. I keep a book. I don't put it in a computer. You have to start practicing something new. So whether you're tracking your money or if it's automatically saving. So maybe you're really good with money and but you don't have a lot of money saved or you're afraid to get in the market. It's like starting to save, automatically save. I mean, if you save $25 a week or if you save $100 a month, um, systematically, your brain is going to start to go, oh, look, we have money. And you don't raid the savings account. You don't put money in a savings account and then bring it over every month because you're short. That is going to continue to keep things going the way they are. So you have to practice new, somewhat scary new habits on a daily basis. You need an accountability partner. You need somebody to stay accountable with. The best person to do that with is with a bestie. It's not great to do that with a partner or a spouse because right away, because there's a lot of money beliefs and there's collision and there's all kinds of stuff that can happen. There's a lot of blaming. So I would say, do it with somebody that you really trust, a friend who's interested in doing the same thing. But if you don't practice, you're never going to have a new habit. So just let's keep this really basic because money can be so, overwhelming. Practice something new. And then over time, you'll have changed. You will literally have changed the way that you deal with money. You got to stick with it.
I love what you're saying with just the small steps, because a lot of people, this happens when people join a new industry or they're wanting to change their life and they're like, this industry has so much potential. And so they jump in and they want to radically change everything. And then they just kind of fall on their face and then they disappear, right? In our industry, we are taught, it's embedded into us that you will not get rich quick, but you will get rich surely. So just understanding that if you are getting rich quick, something might be wrong, right? It might backfire on you. I'm just saying, but there's a great feeling behind that, knowing that if I do the small things right, I can't stress this enough, because I am grateful that, my parents let me hold on to money. They would give me money, and we had our bank account. So we understood that early on. I'm grateful that I grew up in a household where my parents were very organized with paying the bills. So it's almost embedded into me to know to
Mm,
pay my bills. I actually started to appreciate the art of paying bills instead of
mhm.
avoiding it. I have like a great association. Like when I pay a bill, I put a smiley face on it and say, "There you go. I owe you
Nice,
nothing." And
nice.
I can't express that feeling to people of just not having that burden of debt. What are your thoughts on debt? This is a touchy
Yeah,
subject for a lot of people. I think there's good ways to use it. There's dangerous ways to use it. My personal experience is that, I love being in a place of freedom. Freedom is one of my most powerful values in my life, right? So
mhm.
for me, if I have heavy debt in my life, I don't feel free. And I
Yeah.
don't mean I don't that doesn't mean that other people can, play with millions and hundreds of millions of debt. Maybe I'm not there, but what are your thoughts on debt? I would love to hear from you.
Yeah. When you talk about debt, what debt are you talking about? Are you talking about
Exactly.
consumer debt? Are
Yeah,
you
I would
talking about
say so.
yeah,
For a lot of people, that's such a good question that you asked, because not all debt is the same, right?
right.
The way
It's
a
not. Yeah.
business person uses debt is not personal debt. So let's talk about personal debt and make
Okay.
people understand that business debt is different.
Yeah. So personal debt, if we're talking strictly about consumer personal debt. So consumer personal debt's going to be credit cards, it's going to be those personal loans, it's going to be those consolidation loans, like those lending trees of the world. Um, Not lending tree, but the borrowers, you pay everything off in 5
Right.
years and
Those scary
10%.
people just don't pick up the
Yes,
phone.
right, right, right. Um, so I mean, here's some reality. We go into debt. The number one reason why we go into debt in America is medical bills, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah. So, so, so we've got a couple issues that are, national issues, systemic issues. One is we don't have a good healthcare system. There's some real issues on why people go into debt. So I want to be really fair in that way and just say, if somebody loses their job, we're coming out of COVID, a pandemic, people might have more credit card debt than they've ever had
Right.
because they lost a job. Somebody in the family, they lost some of their income. You know, so there's some caveats to, when you have consumer debt, it's medically related, it's job loss related. Yeah, great. Yes. Could you have had more savings? Sure. But you know what? We didn't know a pandemic was coming. We didn't understand that. So I just want to put that out there for some people that might be in that situation and just say, hey, there's no shame in that. That you did the best you could. You're trying to survive, family. Family first, you got to take care of yourself. Um, so aside from that, if we're just talking about plain old credit card debt, where people are just buying stuff and
Keeping
not
up with
thinking
the
about it,
Joneses debt.
right? That's right. And just swiping it and auto pays and subscription crazy. You know, the debt is there to teach you something. So if you were to take a breath and just step back and look at the debt and say, geez, what is the debt? Like, what is that? Right. So energetically, what it is, in my opinion, is fear, shame, anger, resentment, depression, right? So there's a lot of stuff, emotional stuff that hangs out in debt. You have to start pulling the debt apart to actually, in my opinion, to like pull it apart. Like, what's in there? What did you spend money on? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's mostly food, eating out, dining out. It wasn't travel because we didn't go anywhere for a year. Um, Food, stuff, stuff for the house, new stuff, a new bed, a new couch, a new lamp, a new computer, a new stuff. A lot of people got into stuff, you know. Um, so that is really, it's really an emotional imbalance of you're just not grounded. You're not living from a place of discernment. Do I need this? Do I want this? Okay. If you're not able to ask yourself that question, that simple question, is this a need versus a want? That's where you're going to have to start. You got to back up. You got to slow down. You got to catch up to yourself. A lot of people hire me and they say this, I can't catch up, right? And I say, okay, well, tell me, where is your money going? And then as soon as we look at where the money's going, it's because they're thinking about that vacation. They're going over there and doing that for their kids. They're buying that car without thinking about it. They're putting their kids in a camp without thinking about it. They're spending in ways that is completely not thoughtful and not conscious. So the debt is sitting there. It's painful as hell. Nobody likes debt. Nobody likes debt. I don't care who you are. Nobody likes having any credit card debt, because what it means is the paycheck that you're earning, whether you're self-employed or working for somebody else, the paycheck that you're getting is already used. So you're working for money that was already spent, and that doesn't feel good. So if you've got a bunch of debt, you're not motivated in the morning. It's like, why do I got to go to work? I got to pay back that debt. That's why I'm going to work. You got to pay back the fun you already had. So it becomes a drag. It becomes a burden. It becomes soul crushing. You lose your creativity. You lose your inspiration. So if you want to learn about yourself, use your debt as the teacher. The debt is there to tell you, why aren't I able to discern? Why can't I slow down? What happened? What happened that I can't slow down? What am I running from? Why am I so anxious? Why am I so nervous? A lot of these things are emotional. These are your emotional needs that are not being attended to.
I love this. It ties into what you said initially when like your worth. And it's so funny because do you know I have never carried over a balance with credit cards, and I say this not to brag, but I say this because I've always had this mentality of like I want to use the money, I don't want the money to use me. I want to use the credit card company to do my accounting at the end of the year and categorize my purchases, but I don't want them to use me and make my make my purchases cost me way more than they actually what I paid for them, right? Through interest and all this stuff. And it really does, it matters who we surround ourselves with, because there are responsible people with money, and if you could get around responsible people with money, the conversations you will have are different, right? And
Mhm.
I always say this, like, I said this before, I love nice things, but it took me a long time to get nice things, right? And so I always said, if I buy a nice purse, well, then I need to have more money than what the purse costs, right? A lot of
Mhm.
people are just getting the label, the image of
Yeah.
it. How important do you think having the right people in your life is to your success and for you to just really ground yourself, understand your worth, so you're not comparing yourself to other people, but you're learning from people that are more wise than where you are right now?
Yeah, I think it's a great observation. I want to go back though.
Okay.
Because I was one of those people that had a lot of credit card debt.
How did you
I
get out? We would
Yeah,
also like to know that. How do we get
yeah.
out of that?
So let me just go back and say this. I think what you experienced in your childhood was fantastic. Like your parents really had an understanding. They really sat you down. They helped you understand. That wasn't my story. I grew up with a single mother that was abandoned by her husband, three small kids by the time she was 21. living on hardly any money. And she lived in a chronic state of fear and anxiety, low self-esteem, and she started using layaway. I grew up, this was in the 70s, right? So she starts using layaway, which is a very popular thing that Kmart started, and J.C. Penney and all of those early retail stores. And so I grew up watching my mother make payments for what we needed. So it was a mindset of, go get that and then we'll make payments. Go down the street and get this and then we'll make payments. It was a payment plan to the dentist. It was a payment plan to the landlord. It was a payment plan to the grocery store, or not the grocery store, but the basic needs for clothes. So I grew up in a payment plan system. So when I got my first credit card when I was 18 from American Express, I thought, okay, I have a job and I can start having things, but I'll just make payments. Like it was basically how I grew up.
Right.
So we got to really give this voice, because it's not about, oh, I want to use debt and I like using debt and I like using credit cards. It's really not. It's about, what did you learn as a kid? And so for me, what ended up happening is I had a job, I had a salary, and then I had all these payments. And I knew I could afford them. So I had a car payment, I had my insurance payment, I had a credit card pay. And then I just started living my life around payment plans, because that's the way my mother did it. And likely my mother still does it that way, believe it or not, in her 70s. So I didn't know any better. And then here comes the other piece to your question. How is it important to surround yourself with people that know a little bit more? And that is how I got out.
Yes.
So I started surrounding myself with people that had a different lifestyle, had a different consciousness. I got into corporate sales. I had a manager, I had a mentor. People started showing up and helping me. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know that it was harming me. I didn't know that it was having these emotional consequences, until somebody said, hey, I don't think that's a smart idea, because you've got all these payments. So now you're so reliant on your income, like you can't even take a breath. And I was in sales. So I was constantly, the more money I made, the more I went from a Honda to a Mercedes, like overnight, within a year. My little Honda went from a really nice single family home, and then I had to be on the ocean, and went from one stage to the next stage. Then went from having a moderate wardrobe to Nordstrom's, and this is in my 20s. This is in the time where I'm running around with this unexamined belief system. So today I do it much differently, because I had my brother's death, my own exploration into my money beliefs. And today I have more money than I've ever had. I'm debt free and all that stuff. But that's not how it started.
Right.
It's just not how it started out. So I think it's just really important that whoever might be listening to this, that don't compare yourself to somebody else's childhood experience. We don't even know what people's childhood experiences is. So if we have a friend that's doing fantastic with money and we're not, that's where the shame starts getting in there and starts breaking you down. So it's really important just to meet yourself where you are and to understand, why am I in debt? What happened as a kid? And who can I get around? Who is around me that knows a little bit more? And I got out of debt because I had a circle of female women, just a village of women that kept pulling me and do this, read that, go over there, work on that. People just really loved me, thank God. And it made a tremendous change. So we need mentors, we need coaches, we need therapists, we need girlfriends. We need people to help us see what we can't see in ourselves.
I really, really, I can't express how important that is. When we're in money issues, we need education more than we need money.
Yeah.
We need
Yeah.
education more than we need money. Because if someone gives us money, it won't necessarily, it might temporarily pay the bills, but it might also make you accumulate more debt and have you end up in an even worse position. It's almost
Mhm.
like if you won a car, like, or if you were handed down a car. I look at our children and they're like, when I grow up, can I have that car? And I'm like, no, you can go get your own. I'm not giving you a car that you have no understanding of how to drive and then you kill yourself and I'm going to be stuck with that,
Mm.
right? So it really just
Mm.
circles back to how I started. Worry about what you are becoming. When
Mm.
people look at a job and a career, money, of course, is a great thing. We need it for being on planet Earth. But the more important question is, who am I becoming? Am I growing as an individual? Am I pushing the edge of what I'm capable of doing? Because that's a skill set that can pay you. And so I love that you bring this up. And then just to tie it back, what is the power behind changing our story? I believe in generational wealth. I believe in creating this. I believe that we are here to do more than just pay our bills to survive, but our brain is designed to only make us survive. So we have to override that. But once we rewrite a new story of what I'm doing and the purpose is to outlast me, we can create, if one person makes that decision, they can change their family tree. So if you can talk, just to really wrap up the power of rewriting that story. So we see the story. No, we don't like the story. And you said I grew up in a great household. There were some faults there. I don't want to give them all the credit. There were some
Right.
faults. But I saw that and I said, no, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So what is the power behind being able to see it, then change it and rewrite
Yeah.
history for the future?
Yeah. I got it. I've never been asked that question, and I love that question. Um, you know, I'll tell you, I'll answer that from just from my heart, is that my motivation for rewriting the story, my motivation was for my brother's children to see something different,
Wow.
you know, so that they they didn't feel like that was it. My brother had two kids, an 18-year-old and a 10-year-old, when he died. And those kids were watching. They wanted to see who was going to step up, who was going to show them something different. And, you know, that's the power of it for me. It's like it was bigger than me. It was an experience that this is going to continue to happen in my family. It's happened all over the majority of my mother and father's siblings and cousins, and there's so much pain and shame around money. And I can see that. I could see it at the time. And I wanted those children to know there was another way. So that motivated me to do the work. And it motivates me every day to have these conversations and to help the people I have and to elevate my platform, even if those kids aren't doing it yet, right? But they're watching. Um, and if the power of it is, it's it is so it's a lonely walk if you're the only person in the family that's walking this path. I will tell you that it's been lonely because people don't like change in your family, and they'll tell you all a million reasons why you shouldn't be talking what you're talking and saying what you're saying and everything else, because they get exposed, which I understand that fear. Um, but the self gratification, the connection that I feel to purpose and passion, and breaking out of all of these legacy belief systems and this inherited belief systems. The power is that this next generation gets to have it a little bit different. They get to see one person in the family and go, hey, but that person was super successful and that person did it. Then why can't I do it? When it's in the family, it's very different than if it's on TV.
Mhm.
For me, it was like Oprah Winfrey. I watched her do it, but nobody in my family was doing it. But Oprah was doing it, and she brought on every person that was doing it. Every woman that was breaking out of family legacy stuff, she kept giving them a platform. Today, I think we're so inundated with so much because of social media that kids can't even see. They can't see. But if they have somebody in their family that's like, hey, come here, let me show you. Let me show you. That's the that's the satisfaction. That's why it's so important because there's so many children that need somebody to watch. And what do you want to you want to have them watching you just continue the family pattern, or do you want to show them how to be empowered, how to break free, how to create something, with their own hands and their own creativity? Um,
Wow, that's what we call a full circle moment, right? Where you just you broke out of that circle. And I want to close with everyone just knowing that you could be the one. You
yeah,
could be that one in your family. And Tammy, your message is powerful because you were that one in your family. And whether they give you the acknowledgement or not, you should know that those children, it's taken into their subconscious and now they know that it's possible, right? It's like the leadership is
yes,
visual. So they
yep,
see it in their family and then now they know that they can do it too. And for anyone who is struggling, I love what you said about leadership is lonely sometimes when you're going
mm,
against what everyone else is doing.
mhm,
And it's worth it though. It's worth it, but you got to be
mhm,
strong. You got to surround yourselves with other strong voices. I'm grateful you had other people that had the courage to lead and educate you better. Because the
mhm,
truth is, we don't have to be alone, but we have to have the courage to get around better circles that can
mhm,
grow us in a better way. So it's been an honor to connect with you. Your story
mm,
will help so many other people. I'm grateful for this time that we had where, just for you to share that it's so worth it to be able to go through
mm,
the mess, the detox, so that we can
mm,
get to that like free and liberating place where we are able to make decisions because we want to, not because we have to. So I
mm,
love that. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your message. Your book is Money Detox. For those people that want to get their hands on it and start going through the layers of what is my
mm,
story, what is keeping me back, what is, even though I might have a great opportunity, there's something that's like messing it up there. So we got to clean that up so we can really, get into that world, that life that we want, all of us want it, right?
mm,
So in memory of your brother, my heart goes out to you for what you
mm,
what you endured, but it's just an honor to see that you overcame and that you came
mm,
out better on the other side. So thank you for your
mm.
time today. I really, really sincerely appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Have a great, great day.